John was making 40 calls a day for 2 months straight. Same market, same script, same product. And his pipeline was dead. Most sales managers would change the script, hire the trainer, or worst case scenario, blame the leads. I changed one thing and only one thing: no new tools, no new training. And in March, he doubled his production in a single day. And here's exactly what I did and why it works on any rep in any market. So John is the guy who's training with me for a while, and he's pretty much like number one role is going through the cold lists of clients and making sure that he sets a proper appointments for his closer in his company. Before I've met him, right, the way he thought that he's gonna approach the sales was by playing the skills game, right? Less doing, be more efficient, which is good, right? But if you don't have like the inputs, it's pretty hard for you to move forward. So what he did, he was heavily impacted by conversations that he had, and in between his calls, after he attempted to dial somebody, he spent the time to check those records in the CRM, check the prospect on internet, and only then he dialed him. And after he did it, he went back to the CRM and did like self-reflection before he kind of hit his next dial. So, and at the very beginning, what we did, we started working with his skill side because that mattered as well. But through the time, I have realized that just that skills part wasn't the only one that actually held him back from having a proper results. So if you're new here, I post real rep data and real call breakdowns every Wednesday. Subscribe below, this is worth staying for. So the data showed something that surprised even me. His contact rate in January was 57%, and in March it was like 67. The market didn't change, the opportunity was always there. He wasn't underperforming because of the skill, product, or the market. He was unconsciously managing the outcomes instead of the inputs. And the big problem with trying to manage the outcome of conversation is that you start to have that feeling that you are like a god, right? Having that capability of controlling what's happening with the prospect and what is going to be his decision, which is false because you can't do it. And most importantly, if you have that perception, what happens with you after every single failed call where you kind of didn't influence their decisions? Well, I need to confess, I did pretty much the same thing. And the worst part when I was doing it, it was not only the fact of how I felt on my next call, but it was the feeling that, hey, maybe the methodology that I'm using is not working. Maybe I'm not that good. And there was like this crazy spiral of doubts that pretty much was sitting in my head. And I do believe that the heavy part of the reason of why I did it, and maybe why you do it, is because how we've been trained, right? Because most of the sales trainers and experts, they're so convincing. They have these facts, reframes, they have these identity framing and everything, right? Well, while you digest it, you kind of have this feeling that you can actually control that outcome, which is not true. So here's what I told him: forget the contacts, forget the meeting, and forget the closes. You have exactly one job: dial the number, that's it. That is the only thing you can control. Everything else, whether they pick up, whether they're interested, whether they buy, that is a lagging indicator of this one number.
Pick up the phone and start dialing.
So, and this was like a short conversation at the very end of our skills training. After I've asked him about the numbers and how did he perform the last week, what was his number during that day, and I was surprised because, like, in the skills wise, during the whole training, his level of knowledge was already been progressing, and he actually was good already, just because of the time that we spent training together. But the numbers, these lagging indicators, didn't show that up. Obviously, his reaction at the very beginning was, a little bit guarded. He tried to push back. He said, "Well, you know what? I'm not that guy. I'm not just gonna do the numbers game. I want to be skilled. That's where I want to be, right?" And only after asking him a couple of questions and kind of reframing him on his perspective on how he should do the job, he kind of came up with the conclusion that, hey, his skills game is irrelevant if he's not putting in the reps. After like 10 or 15-minute conversation, I kind of noticed that he leaned towards like this perspective. I didn't want him, to rip off his shirt on his chest and say, "Hey, I'm gonna do it," right? But I kind of saw that something shifted in him, and then we just said goodbye up until our next session. So here's the data that shows across the full quarter: almost like 3.3 thousand dials, 2,000 connected calls, and that's like 58% contact ratio, 690 real conversations over 2 minutes, 631 unique people who actually have spoken with him. And that contact ratio, 57 up to 76%, was constant through January and the March. The market didn't change, his activity did. And one mindset shift unlocked roughly 600 extra dials in March alone compared to his January pace. So if you're managing the team, don't just focus on the skill part, because obviously that is important. Well, look at how much inputs every hour every of your rep is actually doing. And if there is lack of the calls or activity, well, the question is where the time is leaking and how you could possibly help them. And if you're a solo rep or solo entrepreneur like watching this, well, one of the big problems could be is like, and I've heard that from a lot of people, is that, hey, I don't want to waste my time talking with the people that is underqualified. Well, that's part of the game, right? For you to talk with them, or there's assistance on how you can triage them before they got in front of you in the first place. But either way, you're like devoting your time for inputs, and make sure you just do them instead of like hopping on a couple of calls and then thinking, hey, I'm not gonna call nobody up. I need to change my marketing because of this, because there's like underqualified people coming in. You cannot control whether somebody picks up the phone. You can't control whether they're interested. You cannot control whether they're buy. You can control how many times you dial. Everything else in the sales is a lagging indicator of that one number. And if you're still watching, I break down real calls, real data, and real rep transformations every week. Subscribe below. I post every Wednesday.